Hey guys, first of all, let me say that if you want a cheap, decent set of wall-mounted coat hangers, you should probably go to IKEA. They have everything. But if you're like me and you want something that they don't sell at the store, and you don't mind spending a week making it, then keep watching. I started this project by picking a nice piece of natural walnut veneer with the intention of leaving its natural form dictate the shape of my product. There were some cracks and other imperfections along the edges, so I removed them with a sharp blade. Then I took the piece to the wall and made sure that it fit and that there was enough distance from the left and the right corners. Of course, I couldn't just stick the veneer to the wall. I took out a piece of 1 cm plywood and using a pencil, I outlined a piece as big as the piece of veneer. I decided on using 2 plywood pieces glued on top of each other so that the back of my hangers would look like a big slab of walnut. But you don't have to do this. You can totally just go to the hardware store and get a single piece of whatever thickness you like. This was simply the material I already had. On the next day, I glued the piece of veneer to the 2 laminated pieces of plywood. If you have never worked with veneer before, don't worry, it's super easy. Just be generous with the glue and make sure that your clamps do not move the piece around as you tighten them. Also, it is a very good idea to use scraps of wood between your piece and the clamps so that they don't damage your wood. I let the glue dry really well for 24 hours and then using a jigsaw, I trimmed the excess plywood. It is very important to use a fine blade for this job. It cuts more slowly, but it leaves a nice, clean edge. Notice that I intentionally gave the piece of wood a bit of a wavy curve along the edge. Now, I could absolutely leave the edges exposed like this, but I really wanted to cover it with more veneer. And for the task, I used some of the cutouts from 2 days ago. This is essential if you want the piece to look like a natural slab of wood from all angles. To glue the strips of veneer around the edges, I simply held it in place with masking tape, making sure that it was pulling strongly enough so that the pieces get glued up well. This was the first time I was doing this, and the results were much better than I expected. I used a small plane to remove the excess veneer on the ends. Since I didn't have any matching pieces of veneer for the long edges, I cut new pieces whose color matched as closely as possible. They ended up looking fine at the end. Again, I used masking tape to glue all side pieces of veneer and I was very generous with it. The plane was super useful for removing the excess, but you can always use sandpaper. Next, I had to sand the whole thing. Every side that was going to show, I sanded down as well as I could. Then I used a piece of damp cloth to clean all surfaces from the dust. This caused the grain of the veneer to rise, but that wasn't a big deal. I just sanded all surfaces one more time and that took care of all imperfections. The piece was starting to look great, but it still needed a coat of finish on top. Before that, however, I decided to drill 2 holes for the mounting screws. I did this just in case, before I wasn't sure if drilling these later would damage the finish. I also used the tip of a large bit to create a sink, so that the head of the screw that was going to go in would sit flush with the surface of the wood. It was time to apply finish. I chose to do this one step at a time, starting with the sides of the piece. I masked the edges of the face with painter's tape because I didn't want to get any drops of polyurethane on it. I applied 4 layers of polyurethane to the sides, then I did the same with the face. Again, after masking the sides so that I don't get any of the finish dripping all over them. This was starting to look awesome. One advice I can give you is to go gently with the polyurethane. Try to apply each layer of finish in one steady go. Then just let it dry. Also, I am using water-based polyurethane, which can be diluted with water. In my case, this made it a bit easier to work with. After spending several days applying finish, I could finally mount the whole thing to the wall. I used 8mm plastic dowels and matching screws to mount the piece, which was probably not the best idea because my electric screwdriver was having a real hard time with it. I had to drive in the screws by hand, which was good exercise. Finally, I could mount the hangers to the wood. These are hangers that I got from the hardware store, and they come with screws of matching color. Notice that I started with the hanger in the middle and then placed the others at an equal distance from it. I also had to make sure that there was enough distance in between hangers so that larger jackets would fit normally. The screws on the sides I painted black so that they match the hangers. And finally, this project is complete. Making this set of hangers wasn't fast or easy, but it was fun and the final result looks awesome. The hangers are super strong, they fit enough jackets, the slab of wood is of the perfect size, and most importantly, this set is unique. It doesn't look like it came from a factory. In case you're curious, the whole thing cost me about $40 to make. This might seem like a lot, but the metal hangers alone cost $25. The materials invested into making the wooden back were much cheaper. I hope that you liked this project and hopefully learned something new. Leave me a comment below if you think that I should have done something differently, and subscribe to my channel to never miss any of my future videos.